Based on the evidence presented, this court finds you guilty as charged.
The night the millionaire cowboy found her, the wind was howling across the plains like it was mourning something lost forever. Dust rolled across the road in long, restless waves, and the moon hung low and pale, watching silently as Ethan Blackwood reined his horse to a stop. Ethan was known across 3 counties as the richest cattleman in the territory, a man whose land stretched farther than some men could ride in a day. He had gold in the bank, thousands of cattle branded with his mark, and a house big enough to echo with silence. But on that night, all of it meant nothing, because loneliness weighs heavier than gold. As he adjusted his coat against the cold, his eyes caught something unnatural near the fence line, a shape that didn't belong to the land, a woman barely standing, bent like the wind itself might snap her in half. She didn't look like trouble. She looked like the aftermath of it. Her dress was torn and stained with dust, her hair tangled by weeks, maybe months of hardship. One shoe was gone. Her eyes, when they lifted to meet his, carried fear so deep it made Ethan's chest tighten. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She simply whispered, "Please, I just need a place to rest." Ethan had seen towns turn people like her away before, widows, runaways, women, with no name and no protection. He had seen doors slammed shut and heard excuses dressed up as morals. But something in her voice, steady despite exhaustion, stopped him. He could have ridden on. Many men would have. But Ethan Blackwood hadn't become a legend by ignoring what his conscience demanded. He lifted her onto his horse without a word. She flinched at his touch, not from pain but from memory. The ranch loomed ahead, lanterns glowing like small promises in the dark. When he brought her inside, the warmth of the house nearly broke her. She stood frozen, unsure if this kindness was real or just another illusion before cruelty returned. Ethan set food in front of her, stepped back and said simply, "You're safe here." She ate like someone who hadn't been safe in a long time. Between bites, she told him her name was Clara. No last name, no past she was willing to share, only that everyone else had turned her away when she needed help the most. Days turned into weeks. Clara helped around the ranch, quiet but diligent, her presence slowly filling the empty spaces Ethan had learned to live with. He noticed how she sang softly while working, how she spoke gently to the horses, how laughter, real laughter, escaped. Once she realized no one was coming to send her away. Ethan, the man who had everything except a family, felt something unfamiliar growing inside him. Hope. He didn't ask questions. He didn't demand explanations. For the first time in his life, his home felt alive. But peace never comes without a price. The town noticed her. Whispers spread. Some said she was cursed. Others claimed she was hiding something dangerous. Ethan heard it all and ignored it until one afternoon when men arrived at his gate demanding answers. Clara overheard everything. That night she packed her few belongings, convinced she was about to ruin the one good thing she had ever been given. When Ethan found her by the door, ready to leave, his voice cracked for the first time in years. "This is your home," he said, "and no one gets to take that from you. If this story is already touching your heart, this is your moment to subscribe, because stories like this only get deeper, more powerful, and more unforgettable from here." The truth came out not in anger, but in tears. Clara confessed everything by the fireplace as dawn crept through the windows. She had been married once, to a cruel man who valued control over love. When she finally escaped, pregnant and desperate, the world punished her for surviving. Her child had been taken from her by sickness on the road, buried beneath a tree with no name. The grief hollowed her, and the town saw only a woman marked by tragedy. Ethan listened without interrupting, his jaw tight, his eyes dark with emotion. When she finished, expecting rejection, he did the unthinkable. He knelt in front of her and said, "You didn't lose a family. You were robbed, and I know what that feels like." Ethan had never spoken of his past, not of the wife he lost to illness years before, or the unborn child buried beside her. He had built his empire to outrun the pain, but money never silenced grief. Clara's presence had awakened something he thought was long dead. Together, they found healing not by erasing the past, but by honoring it. The ranch transformed. Laughter replaced echoes. Kindness replaced isolation. Months later, when Ethan proposed, not out of obligation, but out of love, the land itself seemed to breathe easier. They adopted children others didn't want. Orphans, runaways, lost souls. The house once too large became barely big enough. The millionaire cowboy who once rode alone now stood at the center of a family forged, not by blood alone, but by mercy. Clara, the woman everyone turned away, became the heart of it all. And Ethan Blackwood finally understood wealth had nothing to do with what you owned, and everything to do with who you protected. As the sun set over the ranch, children laughing in the distance, Ethan took Clara's hand and whispered, "You didn't just give me a family, you gave me a life." If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you that kindness can change everything, subscribe to this channel now, because the next story might change you the same way. This one changed them. Years later, people would say the Blackwood Ranch felt different from the moment you crossed its gates. It wasn't just the size of the land or the shine of prosperity that caught your breath. It was the sound, children's voices layered with laughter, the steady rhythm of life moving forward without fear. But peace is never permanent without being tested, and the greatest test of Ethan and Clara's family came when they least expected it. It began with a letter sealed in red wax, delivered by a trembling courier who looked as though he'd rather face a stampede than stand on Blackwood soil. The letter bore the mark of a powerful man from the Eastern Territories, a man whose name Clara had prayed never to hear again. Her former husband's family, wealthy, influential, and unwilling to accept that the woman they once tried to erase had built a life beyond their reach. The letter accused Clara of theft, deception, and abandonment. Worse, it demanded custody of the adopted children, claiming legal entitlement under laws twisted by money and influence. When Clara's hands shook reading the words, Ethan saw fear he thought he had banished forever. The town turned uneasy. Old whispers resurfaced, sharper now, dressed in legality and threat. Some neighbors urged Ethan to protect his fortune by distancing himself from Clara. Others warned that fighting powerful men could cost him everything. Ethan listened quietly, then did what he had always done when faced with injustice. He stood firm. He rode into town, walked into the courthouse, and placed his reputation, wealth, and future on the line without hesitation. "These children are mine," he said to the judge. "This woman is my wife, and this family will not be torn apart by men who mistake power for righteousness." The courtroom was packed the day of the hearing. Clara sat rigid, memories clawing at her, convinced history was about to repeat itself. Then something extraordinary happened. One by one, people stood to speak, not out of obligation, but gratitude. Ranch hands, teachers, widows, travelers, and even former critics testified to the kindness of the Blackwood family. They spoke of meals given without question, shelter offered without judgment, children saved from starvation and despair. The millionaire cowboy who once lived alone was revealed not as a man of wealth, but as a man of character. When the judge ruled in their favor, Clara broke down, not in fear this time, but relief. Outside the courthouse, Ethan wrapped his arms around her as their children rushed forward, clinging to them like proof that love had won. The powerful men from the East left defeated, their influence useless against a truth too strong to silence. That night the ranch glowed under a sky full of stars. A celebration erupted, not planned but necessary. Music, dancing, food shared between generations who once believed they had no place in the world. Ethan stood on the porch, watching Clara move among the children, her laughter effortless, her eyes finally free of shadows. In that moment, he realized the greatest miracle of his life wasn't wealth or land. It was the family built from broken pieces that somehow fit perfectly together. As the fire burned low, Ethan spoke quietly to the gathered crowd. "This home was built on second chances," he said, "and anyone who needs one will always find it here." The words traveled far beyond the ranch that night, carried by hearts forever changed. If this chapter reminded you that love can stand against any storm, subscribe to this channel now. Because stories like this don't just entertain, they remind us who we can become when we choose. Compassion over fear and the Blackwood story? It wasn't ending, it was only growing.